acquiring stream, and it says we are connected. No one will ever see that, but
no one will ever see it. Okay, so
are you putting it in the chat room? Do I need to put it in the chat room?
Oh, it did find it. So,
you know, another topic we could add, if do you keep up with that silly Facebook group?
A little bit. I don't read it all.
Did you see the one yesterday about the guy who got a 1-star review?
I saw, but I didn't read it.
It makes you sad for society if you do. So, you know, they've got that scammy deal where they go and rate each other's podcasts, you know, to get everybody bumping up. And so it's like part of it, the way that it works is like to post your link, you have to rate 3 other people's show first or something. I don't know. I'm not participating in this pyramid scheme, but anyway, this one guy, he got a 1-star review and he's all, you know, backside hurt about it. Like, you know, my life is ending. What's going to happen? You know, I mean, just whining.
Yeah.
And so it turns out that one of the other podcaster guys gave him the 1-star review.
Dope.
And the guy admitted to it, right? Because you can't tell who did it. But he's like, I did it because, you know, I had to watch or listen to your show and I didn't like it, right? Your whole show was a sales pitch for an MLM. And, you know, I know some people that have, you know, been financially hurt by MLMs. I think they're the devil. And, you know, it was a 1 for me. So, man, they lost their minds. They're like, you can't do that. You should have just privately told him that you didn't like it. And, you know, I mean, just negating the whole idea of an actual honest rating. And, only give honest ratings if you like them. If you don't like it, you should just tell him privately instead of giving him a negative rating. And, like, it sounds like they threw him off the Facebook group. I mean...
Really? Wow.
Most of me wants to jump in and just rage on all of them. I'm a bunch of little children, but there's no good that'll come of it. Don't feed the trolls. So I've stayed out of it, but you know.
That's funny. And the guy even stood up and admitted, yeah, that's funny.
So you can't, I want to be like, well, welcome to the internet. You know, if your show ever gets any type of popularity, it's one of the signs you're getting popular. You get fake or you get bad reviews. It comes with the territory. So,
yeah.
But I don't know. Most of me wants to leave the group now just because I'm principal.
I feel like I made the right judgment in not reading that thread.
Made me angry.
Oh, jeez. That's funny stuff.
I don't know. Almost, right? Because then I was channeling. Thankfully, I'm 40 now, so I'm much more mature. I want to go because the guy posted, what his show was. I almost went and left me a 1-star review. Just because
that's how you roll.
Yep. Once again, though, as the chat rooms reminded me, you don't feed the trolls, so I didn't. But
yeah, I mean it's like wrestling with a pig. You just get dirty, and the pig likes it. I mean that's what arguing with trolls is. Just cannot win. Lori will not be here today. So we are on our own.
So I like it, Mark. Mark wants me to start posting. Wants me to post a pineapple in the thread.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Mark, I can tell you that these self-absorbed people would not understand or
could not be abused.
No.
If they were psych fans, they might think it was funny.
I don't. I mean, you're when you open yourself to the internet, you just have to accept it's part of the game.
Not everybody's going to agree with you. Yeah.
I mean, some people, half the negative comments on my channel are spam, right? They're fake ones that are being done by bots so that they have, fake comments everywhere to actually do one targeted fake comment they wanted to without getting caught.
Yeah.
You can't fight it. You just have to, okay.
Yep. Since I moved my blog, I've been trying to keep up on the spam comments, and I get a ton of them. 30, 40 a day, probably.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. And did you still have the weird little like fake CAPTCHA thing?
I just haven't put the date on there. But I devised that, 9 years ago, so they figured that out.
Yeah.
They're hip to so I need to do something else. I thought about writing a couple of PowerShell scripts. I've tried to find some, all I have is a hammer, so let's turn this into a nail kind of solutions, but nothing's come to mind yet.
Yeah, and once again, SharePoint's not really meant for this type of work, so
not even remotely. I jumped into the object model to find out how those comments, because one of the things I was going to do is say, this is simple. If somebody posts a comment that has HTTP in it, delete it. Yep. But getting that figured out has been, just the way that all the pieces are, like the text of the comment is bundled inside of an XML field or something. Yeah.
Write you some camel.
Yeah, that's what's gonna end up being. Or just say screw it and every day go in and delete them.
You put one of the kids on it. Be like, Lily, here's your new job.
Yep. Something like that. Here's how you get to play with the internet. Man, my headphones will just not stay in today. I wonder if my ears have shrunk. Should we go ahead and go live? Not make these fine folks wait any longer?
Yeah, I guess I should probably. Hang on a second. Let me do a better job of organizing this stuff. I forgot that I have responsibilities here.
All right, for those of you that are watching live and are in Slack, Lori will not be here today. So I have pushed upon you the responsibility of putting show titles in. So if one of us says something funny and you think it'd make a good show title, put it in Slack and then bold it or something so that I can go back through and pull those out. Ready to go?
Yes, sir.
Visual cue for me when I edit it later today because I've been on top of this. All right, counting down. 3, 2, 1. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Todd and Shane's Cloudy Podcast number 386, recorded live Wednesday, April 25th, 2018. I am your host, Todd, and then there's that guy.
I'm Shane.
Good morning, Shane.
Hello.
So let's talk first about production notes. So a couple of things Shane and I have been doing. We've been trying to make an honest podcast out of this thing here for the last year or so. And over the last week, I have submitted it. It should now be in the Google Play Store. Woohoo! So if you go look in Google Play for us, we are there. I have not done that myself, but I got the email from Google telling us we'd gotten the big green thumbs up. So that should be in there. I also submitted us to TuneIn because that's what your cursed Tesla has. Their process is a little slower and less automated. So I did get a reply saying, we got your submission, and then radio silence. So that will probably be up to you to keep looking in there and see if we show up in there.
Very cool. I will definitely keep searching for us in the old TuneIn. I can't wait to be like, and as part of the walkthrough of my wonderful car, look, here's my face. Yay.
Here I am. Yeah, so that's honestly the thing that has kept me from getting us submitted to the Google Play Store for the last year or so is that the logo, the cover art was not up to their standards.
Yep. And
so you had to have one of a certain size. And we've got one now that's good enough to get in, but they still complained about it that it wasn't high res enough or wasn't big enough. So I will probably be fixing that. But that was what got us in there. I've also updated that in the stream, but it looks like iTunes has not picked that up. So it still has the old cover art, and I'm not sure how to fix that. So I don't have any iDevices, but you should go in and see. I fixed that like 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago, something like that. But it still shows the old logo last I looked.
Yeah, and it seemed like, all the podcasters you talk to, right? iTunes is just a black hole. You just never know when it's going to do, what it's going to do, why it does what it does. iTunes just does what iTunes wants to do with your podcast, and you'll like it.
Yeah. Well, as long as that's, it's not anything that I'm doing wrong. So we got all that. So hopefully if there's any other platforms, I know Stitcher's another one that we are not on that we should be on. That's another big one. But if there's any of those kind of platforms that we should be on that other people use or you use to consume podcasts, let us know. So that's a funny one. So I use Pocket Casts on Android and on Windows, and our logo has not updated there either.
Oh,
now that I think about it.
So Stacy says that hers just switched a couple minutes ago. So there you go.
So maybe we should have had Stacy check this all along. Maybe she's our good luck charm. I've checked it, twice a day for the last week. Nothing. Stacy goes in the first time. She's like, "Yep, it's all good."
Yeah, the cache of the cache is getting you, right. That's one of the problems in these SaaS scenarios, right? Not to get completely off topic, but cache between SaaS services has caused me some grief on a couple of different things. I'm like, you guys need to talk to each other better than that, but they can't at scale. So I get why they're caching, but I want it now.
Yeah, that's one of the things I haven't talked about a lot on the podcast, but I use a service on one of my Raspberry Pis called Pi-hole that pulls ads and stuff out and malware, and does it by DNS. But everywhere along the way, DNS is cached, so it's cached here. So if the Pi-hole accidentally blocks something, I can go into the Pi-hole and say whitelist it. But I'm cached 6 times between my browser caches, my machine caches, my other DNS server here at home caches. It's really been a pain.
Yeah, and I don't have it in the topics, but I did see yesterday somebody stole like $52 million worth of Ethereum by exploiting DNS cache changes, right? They switched my Ether wallet to point to some servers in Russia. Surprise, surprise. And they were able to, I guess in AWS, they use Route 53 is kind of how they do DNS. I guess it's their DNS service, if you will. And somebody figured out how to slip a little something in there, stole $52 million worth of Ethereum. The hole got fixed. They were $52 million richer, or $5 million richer. I don't remember the number.
Yeah, it was big money. And it was only, that hole was only there for a couple of hours, but yeah. So we talked a couple of weeks ago about the new DNS servers, that 1.1.1.1. Mm-hmm. I wonder, I haven't read enough. I saw that DNS thing when it came across yesterday, but I didn't read up on it. I wonder what steps people like us can take to prevent ourselves from falling for that. Yeah.
No, it's DNS is definitely still a weak point in the internet that holds our lives together.
Yeah. Yep. So if you've got any podcast platforms, if we don't show up there, let us know and we will start submitting there. Mark Chrisman was kind enough to tell me he uses Podcast Addict, and I asked if we were there, and he's like, I don't know. He didn't do what he was supposed to do and say, I'm not sure, Todd, let me check, and then go out there and do with the typing and the looking. But he's on it now. He's fixing it.
Yeah, Mark, if you find us, make sure you hit subscribe. Even if you don't use it, we just, we need one more subscriber in our lives.
Yep, I properly admonished him in the Slack channel, so he's on it now. So a couple of the production notes. I did get last week's podcast out immediately, so I did publish 3 podcasts in 4 days, which I am positive is a record. I am positive no one on earth has done that before. But I'm not big on the accolades and all that, so I'm not going to submit it to Guinness or anything like that. There's no point in that. But we were all caught up. And I felt like there was times throughout the week that I was sitting here like, man, I feel like I should be doing something. What? And it was because I normally have that podcast production looming over my head, but I did not have that this week. So
did you listen to the Planet Money about the Guinness World Book Records and buying them and all that?
I did. So they've played that one a couple of times. I think the first time I listened to it was a year or so ago. The Guinness Book of World Records was originally by the Guinness beer folks, so people would sit there and read it, and then they sold it off, and now people are buying different things, and cool. So Dan Chrisman in the chat room is asking about the DNS thing. I think if you just go out to any news site, there you go, and look for My Ether Wallet or Route 53 or any of those kind of things.
Now Dan will read it and tell me that I got all the numbers wrong, and
he
impromptu news is never good. All right,
the good news is we can block him in chat. So
even better.
Yep. So another production thing that I want to talk about is we are bringing on a sponsor.
Woohoo!
And this
are we rich now?
Yes. I'll be retiring soon. And this is. This is somebody that I have been working with for years and have known for years, and we're just kind of making it official. It's the company is SysKit. They used to be Acceleradio, but they're the folks that make SP.Kit and have made SP.Kit for many, many years. I know one of the co-founders, Tony Francola. He's a SharePoint MVP, and I've known him forever from those circles. And finally, doing some things official with them. They've been advertising on my blog forever. They're the only people that I've ever let advertise with me because I like their product and the company that much. And so a couple of things about that. So we're going to be promoting them on the podcast now and mentioning them. And as part of that, they put a thing. Do I not have? Oh yeah, I do. I just got an email completely unrelated to all of this, but they released today a free ebook on SharePoint permissions, so best practices and all that. So go ahead. There's a link in the show notes for that, but you can go to syskit, syskit.com and see about that. So the SP.kit thing is funny because they've been doing this since like 2001 or 2011, 2012. I forget exactly when it came out. But when Shane and I first started playing with PowerShell was when it came out in SharePoint 2010. And that was when we were all bright-eyed and looking at all the object model stuff and, get member everywhere we could and pulling everything out. And then Tony and his gang came up with SP.kit, which went through and cataloged all the stuff in your farm. And I'm like, man, that thing is useless. Why would anybody use that? I can write something way better than that in PowerShell, because I had done like 2 things in PowerShell. So that meant I knew everything, Dunning-Kruger in full force at that point. So I started writing pieces here and there and, out file here and trying to make it all work. And I probably fought looking at SP.kit for probably a year or 2. And then at some point, like a customer had it or something. I'm like, oh my God, okay, I'll look at it. And it was amazing and phenomenal. And it was 1,000 times better than anything I'd spent writing in PowerShell the last 2 years. And I'd been a believer ever since. And so that's what they do. So they do a bunch more stuff now, but it's great documentation for your SharePoint farm. So you can run it, once a month, once a week, whatever. Can do comparisons, so it's a great way to figure out how many site collections you add over a period of time, how much storage you add over a period of time. It does, permission management, patch management, all those kind of things. And so it is really great. The other thing is it makes really consumable reports. So one of the things that I used to do at our former employer is we would have customers that had SharePoint farms and they would want some sort of official thing. And I would work with the IT folks, but they always reported to people who like, PowerPoints and pie graphs and all that kind of stuff. SP.kit allows you to very easily make very professional looking reports, and you can put it in a template. So it's got your company's letterhead on it and however you guys want it, and only the things that you want, because it'll go down, really deep, but only thing, and it creates these really nice things so you can, email those to your boss. It's been pretty cool. So those guys have agreed to let me do some stuff for them. And one of the things that I'm going to be doing is talking about them every week in the podcast.
Very, very exciting. I'm glad that they have decided to put a ring on it, make it official. So,
yep. Just for now, go out and download their security management thing.
Yeah, well, it's good stuff. I like you got to use it back in the SharePoint 911 days, and it was a lot better than anything we could have cobbled together. So, yeah,
and they've branched out. They do SQL and all kinds of other things now. But go check them out. And I'm happy in the chat room. Most everybody there has used them and likes it. So that's good. We got the right people. All right, so we're like 10, 15 minutes in. Should we get on to some topics? Talk about some tech?
I mean, technically we've done like 7 topics because I just interjected whatever I wanted to talk about at any given time. So. True story. We're just getting warmed up for SharePoint conference, right? Where, you'll have an agenda, you'll have slides. And I'll be like, yeah, but I really want to talk about this. Sit on the side of the stage and be like, so guys, this is what I want to tell you.
That is absolutely how all of our sessions go. I'm all nervous and I'm like, we need to have a plan. We need to have it figured out. We need to practice. And Shane's like, we're not going to do anything. I'm like, no, we're going to do it. And then we do it and we never follow it. So
there you go. All right. So what do you want to tell me about OneNote?
Well, I had a couple of things. I saw some distressing news. Last week, reported all over that Microsoft is demoting OneNote 2016. So that's the fat client that comes with Office 2016. And going forward, they're only going to develop for the Universal Windows app, the Windows 10 app, UWP or whatever, the modern app. And that made me very sad. So right now, there are 2 OneNote clients out there. The one that we've been using forever, and then the new one that you go to Windows Store and you download it. And I use OneNote all the time. I had lunch with a buddy of mine yesterday, and he uses Evernote, which is essentially the same thing as OneNote. And he's like, inferior, but the same idea. Yep. And he's like, man, I use this Evernote all the time. I probably hit it, 8-10 times a day. And I'm like, I use OneNote constantly. I use OneNote so constantly that I have to have 2 instances of it open because I have so many things. I don't even want to switch back and forth. I have 2 instances of OneNote open at all times when I'm at my computer because everything is in OneNote. So I love me some OneNote. Yep. So I was very sad to hear that they're going to stop essentially development on the version that I use and devote all their time to the other version. because I've used the other version and I'm really not a fan. I don't like it.
Change is bad, right?
Change is not bad necessarily, but the version, at least the last time I used it, didn't have some of the functionality that I was looking for, and I couldn't figure out how to make it look the way that I wanted so it fit on the screen the way that I wanted. Hopefully, with them focusing all of their efforts on that, that will get better. But that was not good news as far as I was concerned.
Yeah, and I'm with you, right? I mean, I run Bold Zebra's Power Apps 911 completely out of OneNote, right? All the customer notes are in there. Yeah. All of the video notes are in there. All of our PowerShell secrets are kept in a different one. You know, all of our SharePoint scripts are kept in a different, tab. I mean, yeah, I'm with you. I use a lot of some OneNote. I guess, what's worse here, so I've tried the modern one as well, and like you, I stayed with the fat desktop version because it was better.
Yeah.
But it worries me, the same for our friend Skype that we're using right now to talk to each other. Every time when I rebooted this before the show started and I loaded Skype, it said, hey, do you want to switch to the modern guy? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And I was like, nope. But yeah, Microsoft is, the writing's very much on the wall, right? That we need to be embracing these modern apps, no matter how much we do not want to be.
Yeah. And so hopefully they'll get it figured out. The Skype thing, I've avoided that on this computer. This is the only computer I have that doesn't have the new version of Skype. Because it's just, and I hate the new version of Skype. I absolutely hate it, but I just got tired of clicking the not now every time Skype came up, every time I rebooted, every time. It wore me down. But yeah, I'm just hoping that there won't be some new functionality that comes out that the old version won't use until the new version's, in a form. And I suppose I should check it out. It's been a while since I've checked it out.
Yeah, and we're still, I'm still very upset, when we lost the MSN Live client and moved to Skype, right? I mean, that was a downgrade that we've still never caught up to. Yeah. And so another down, right? They keep removing features. I don't think that's how tech is supposed to work. I thought. Yeah,
I agree. Better. And with the MSN Messenger, the big thing that I still miss to this day, 5 years later, is being able to have my font and your fonts differently in a chat window. Mm-hmm. So like I would have you be blue and me be red, and I could very easily glance and see who had spoken last and all that. Yeah. So in the chat room, Stacy's saying, isn't Skype going away and becoming part of Teams? Skype for Business is going away to become part of Teams. I don't believe Skype Consumer is, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yeah, they've invested so much in that brand, right? I mean, they paid millions or billions for that brand name. So I just can't imagine them taking all of that, but who knows?
Well, they did it. So Skype was out of the Balkans. I can't remember what country, and I don't want to say either Estonia or Lithuania. I think it was Estonia. And so they paid billions, but they paid billions with that European money that they would have gotten taxed, 35% to bring it into the U.S. So it was money well spent. They paid, pennies on the dollar if they'd have brought it home. And
yeah, definitely. If you're going to start something you want Microsoft to buy, go do it in Europe so you can.
Or Apple, or any of those companies that are trying to navigate those waters. So that was one note story. So I'm kind of sad about that. The other thing was, again, I use OneNote so much for everything. I've had the OneNote app on my Android phone forever since it came out, but I have ramped up my OneNote usage on my phone so much that I can't be bothered to open OneNote and find the thing that I want to add. So I've discovered that inside of OneNote you can take a particular page and pin that to the home screen on Android. So now I've got a couple of places that I frequently look at or add to in OneDrive, and I've added specific icons for those in Android. So I can just pop right in for that. And I'd never looked for that before. Probably everybody already knew about that, but that's pretty handy. I've got, notes and stuff in there.
Yeah, and I know the iOS devices also let you do a very similar thing. And once again, it's one of those great productivity features that almost no one knows about, or people like me who know about it but are too lazy to do it. So.
Yeah. And so now I'm talking about one note, love. I had a customer call here last week, and I knew they were going to be giving me a lot of requirements, and I can't type and talk and pay attention all very much at the same time. So I had OneNote record the call because I did it. It was Skype for Business. So there was an audio thing in there. It would sync up where I took notes, and I can do searches inside of the audio. So that way I didn't miss anything when we were talking. So
yeah, and I use the OCR a lot for my my YouTube work. Right, I take screenshots of what I want to steal, and then take it to OneNote, say copy the text out of that, paste it in. I'm like, boom, no more typing. There's what I wanted.
Yep. So good. So yeah, big lovers of OneNote. Hopefully we won't end up hating the new version as much as we're afraid we will.
Yeah, I think we'll make it do. All right. So
another sad story about upgrading and how the newest version is not always better than the oldest version. Last week, a buddy of mine, Dave Feldman, hit me up on Skype for pleasure. And he knows that I do a lot with PowerShell. And he's like, hey, I'm having this problem that IntelliSense isn't working in PowerShell. And so IntelliSense is when you're in the ISE and you start typing the name of a commandlet and it gives you the drop down. You can pick the one you want. It's kind of like the UI version of Tab Complete. Yep. And I'm like, wow, I've never had that problem, but I don't do a lot in the ISE. I do most of my stuff on the command line. So I was not having the problem. And so Dave and I jump on and we start sharing our screens. And sure enough, that's exactly the problem. And you can't do the control space thing to do it. Nothing. It's just all weird and broken. And so we're both out. We've got browser windows open trying to figure out what the correct search term is to find the solution to his problem. And turns out it's because the box that he was on was a Windows 10 box. And it is in the super duper fastest ring of whatever the updates are. And one of the new versions of the Windows 10 upgrade breaks that in the ISE. Now, here's another thing where Microsoft has told us that the ISE is mostly a dead product. They're not developing new stuff for it anymore. They want everybody to move to VS Code. And so this is one of those things where the OS changed some stuff in the background and the ISE, they don't pay much attention to it, and they didn't realize it had broken IntelliSense. And so there's some things you have to do, some jiggly bits in the background to fix all that. But that was just another one of those. I'm like, oh, here we go.
Yeah, the updates they keep you on your toes. So breaking IntelliSense that's be a big deal. The good news is I'm not on 1803, so I have not had broken IntelliSense yet. But I did have the misfortune of getting, what did I say, like 1709 or 1790 this week. And Windows did its typical thing where all day on Monday I'm like, I hate my computer. I hate my computer. Why won't my computer work? No, it's Tuesday. Terrible day. I'm blaming Chrome. I'm like, well, what's missing? What's missing? Finally, the monthly light bulb goes off and says, have you checked for updates, Shane? I had not. I checked for updates. Sure enough, there it was. So I applied an update. Like, yeah, that seems reasonable. This usually makes it go away. I put the update on, called it a day. My computer then took to blue screening about once an hour after I put the update on.
Yeah.
And I'd never had blue screen issues. I mean, probably 2 in the last year of owning this one. And all of a sudden I was getting one once an hour. My we all know about my woes with USB and the challenges it is USB in this house. My USB devices would stop working. So if it didn't blue screen, I would just have to hit the power button anyway because my keyboard and mouse are both USB.
Which happened while Shane and I were chatting yesterday. I mean, he was in the middle of typing something and all of a sudden all of his device. Yes, that was very funny.
I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. I'm done. So, long story short, I ended up saying, all right, what would I do? And I went back to the old school well. I got out the BIOS drivers. And I'm like, all right, there's some BIOS drivers to apply. There's some USB, manufacturer drivers to apply, a network driver to apply. So the fact that my computer is doing anything right now is borderline shocking.
Well, and it wasn't, 45 minutes ago. There have been several reboots since we tried to get this thing on air.
But yeah, right, that's the sketchiest of sketch. When you're like, yeah, I got to go to the, motherboard manufacturer's website and get this driver, right? Who knows what that driver's really doing?
Oh, yeah.
But the good news is the computer, I think, is back to stable. I don't know. I say that, I'll probably, the show will end right now because it's going to blue screen. But yeah, just a reminder, patch your Windows, patch your drivers, patch, because Microsoft changes things and the stuff in the background doesn't work. It's on you to make the stuff in the background work.
Yep. And so when we were talking about this, when Shane was troubleshooting some of this before, if you go to a command prompt or PowerShell in Windows 10 and type WinVer, it will bring up the little thing that'll tell you what you've got. And there's kind of a major version and a minor version. So our major version, both for Shane and I, is 1709, which means that it came out in the 9th month of 2017, so September of last year.
Fancy.
Whereas the one that Dave had was 1803, so that was a March build from 2018. And then there's another number, so yours was different than mine. I'm running 16299 371, and you were something else.
I'm 402.
Yeah, so that's monthly patches and things like that. And so that's the way to figure it out. But it was the major version. So Mark Chrisman, he's rocking an old school 1.1607, so he hasn't upgraded in a while. And so there's a new version of Windows coming out, the April update, which apparently is going to come out in May now.
Of course.
They were trying to get that one out, and then they found some blue screen issues, maybe similar to the stuff you were seeing. But that will be coming out here soon. But that's something to keep an eye on. That not always do the updates make for a better experience.
Yeah, 1609 is what introduced all my issues with USB, right? I guess maybe I should have patched my BIOS back then, but 1609 was when I had to kind of stop using some of my USB devices for a while and switch back to the old PS2 keyboard because that was the only keyboard I could make work.
That is hysterical. If I had to use it, I don't even know if I could. I don't know if I've got one anymore. I don't know if my computer's got a jack for it.
Yeah, I mean, my big fancy guy has one PS2 jack, not two, but I think the gamers. Sorry, I was just say I think the reason is gamers the latency is lowest on a PS2 connection. So the true, I have a $200 keyboard. All those $200 keyboards are PS2 keyboards. Because
they kind of like the old stock exchange, having your office the closest to the exchange, because that length of wire actually matters.
Yep.
That's hysterical. So one good thing that does come out of updates is something that I was looking at something else earlier this week and found this. This is a PowerShell module that you can download from the PowerShell gallery. It is for free. It is called Burnt Toast, and it is a PowerShell module that allows you to create toast notifications in Windows 10. So I mentioned this for the update is because this module has been out for a while, apparently, and it worked on Windows 8 and some of the things, but you need one of the newer versions of Windows 10 for it to work with Windows 10. But now you're able to, inside of your PowerShell scripts, create the little notifications that pop up over the system tray inside of Windows 10. So I'm not using it yet, but I'm going to start working it into some of my stuff, and it's going to be something like when I have a long-running PowerShell process, it will pop up and let me know when it's finished or something like that.
That's pretty cool. That's a nice little thing. It's amazing what people can do with PowerShell, right? I mean, I always just think of it as command line stuff, but there's definitely people that will take the time to code out a complete Win form, right, and have PowerShell show a form and things like that. So it's always interesting.
Yeah, so I like that. Just another little tool to have in the toolbox.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of burnt toast, what it really did was made me have flashbacks to remember Windows 3.1 and After Dark and the toast screensaver. That's when you said burnt toast. That was the first place my mind went. I'm like, that's really weird. But
I really miss the bad old days when monitors would burn in and you had to have screensavers. And yes, the After Dark stuff. So if you guys don't remember that, the After Dark were third-party screensavers. People actually paid cash money to replace the screensavers that came with Windows. And it was all the fun ones. And one of them was the flying toasters that would just go across your screen. And man, that is awesome. Those were the good old days.
I mean, it was like $20, right? Or 12. I mean, it was real money to have fancy screensavers, and people bought that thing. Somebody made a whole bunch of money off of those terrible things.
Yep. So that, it's funny. I'd forgotten about the flying toast. So last week, so we're kind of shifted topics a little bit. Last week, we talked about how tech was getting misrepresented in the media, the Orrin Hatch thing with Mark Zuckerberg's interview, and how we didn't like, they were trying to paint Congress as these idiots who didn't know how tech worked by taking snippets, and when in reality they did, and it was just the media telling a false story. Yep. So one of those popped up today, and so I felt like variations on a theme. This was an interesting story. So yesterday, one of the big stories that showed up in all of my tech news was a guy named Eric Lundgren who was going to prison. So we're talking big stuff here. Going to spend, got sentenced to 15 months in the pokey and a $50,000 fine. And everything talked about how he was, basically it was like a David and Goliath sort of thing, that he is this guy that does a bunch of e-waste recycling, which is very noble. I certainly support all of that. But he was trying to come up with a business where he created Windows Restore disks for people that bought name brand computers, Dell's, HP, or whatever, that don't come with restore disks anymore. Yep. So he saw in one of his travels and looking at e-waste, he saw all of these restored disks that had been turned into e-waste. And part of the reaction to that was manufacturers quit sending them because they just got thrown away. But then if you had somebody who wanted to rebuild a machine, you didn't have media to do that. And Microsoft would not sell you that media. Depending on which version of Windows and what time frame we're talking, there are ways to download it. And we've talked about that on the show before. There are tools you can download ISOs and create it. But for somebody like my mom and dad, that's not a real solution to their problem. They need the disk. They need to be able to put it in. And you go. So this guy, Eric Lundgren, saw a gap and saw a way to do this. And so he decided to make some of these disks. The important thing about this is while these were disks that had Windows on them, none of them would work if the machine wasn't licensed. So he was not giving anybody a way to pirate Windows because they could not use his disk if they didn't have a license or if their machine didn't have the license built in. He was simply providing a delivery mechanism for them. He got sued by Microsoft and he fought it, and he's going to jail now because of it. So when you hear these stories, you're like, Microsoft are a bunch of terrible people. Oh my God, I can't believe they did this. Like, this guy's like this good thing. And so there's a bunch of stories from reputable sources. The Washington Post was the first one that I read it on, and that was the story that they told. And The Verge, another tech website, told the same story. And I'm like, wow, these guys are horrible. And really the crux of the story was how much they were trying to fine him and how much they were trying to punish him. They were saying, he and the other thing to keep in mind is he never sold a single one of these disks. Like a disk never got in the hands of a customer. He got caught before he had them printed and manufactured, but before he could actually sell them, Johnny Law stepped in and it got out. So then the question became, he printed up, 25,000 of these things. What was the cost? What was the pain to Microsoft? And so they were saying, well, it's, $300 for every copy of Windows. So it's 25,000 times that. And he's like, no. Really, all I'm costing you is whatever it would cost to buy the replacement media. So it's only $20 or $25 a piece. So there's all these damages that are trying to get calculated out. So that's what these stories have really been focusing on. Microsoft picking on a guy who's just trying to save e-waste, and Microsoft being a bad guy because they're trying to inflate the damages that he presented to them.
Sounds like Microsoft is terrible people. Why would you tell us this?
The most horrible people ever. So because the story did not quite ring true, like something about the way this story. So I did the whole Orrin Hatch thing. I started research and I found another version of the story. And this was on Gizmodo, which is funny because as a general rule, I don't like Gizmodo for a long list of reasons. But they had this. Yes, they had the same story with all of the same facts, but they had more information. And they had more information that made the story actually make sense. So it turns out Microsoft was not so mad about him doing the thing that he did, but what got him in trouble is the fact that the disks that he manufactured had Microsoft logos and Dell logos on them. So as a guy who doesn't represent Microsoft or doesn't represent Dell was printing out these disks to sell to consumers that had unlicensed Microsoft and Dell logos on them. And not only did that happen, but in this other article, they have a quote from him. And this is from the guy who got punished. This is from the guy. He says, unfortunately, in what seems to have been a huge mistake, the disks had labels nearly identical to the disks provided by Dell for computers and had the Windows and Dell logos on them. As a result, Lundgren pled guilty, blah, blah, blah. He told the paper, if I had just written Eric's restored disk on them, I would have been fine. So the guy himself admits that what Microsoft is getting at him for was not the thing that all the, the damage and all that. It's the fact that he was trying to illegally use their logos. And for those of us who've been in the business world for a while, you have, as a business, if you have any kind of trademarked logos, you have to defend them constantly, because if you don't, you lose them. You legally lose the right to them. So that's what Microsoft was going after. This guy was publishing stuff with their logos, and they couldn't let that happen. And so they had to go after him. And then go ahead.
And that's no fun though, right? So wait, you're saying that Microsoft pretty much had a legal obligation to sue this guy for doing this thing. And he admits that he did a thing that he shouldn't have done, but we should hate Microsoft for following the law and doing exactly what they had to do.
Yeah, yeah. Guy breaks the law. Guy admits he broke the law. Guy gets punished for breaking the law. There's no story there. That's boring stuff. And so this was another one. I'm like, those guys in the media, they done it again.
And I just can't believe that Gizmodo was the one that had the full story, right? Because as we've said countless times, I also will not go there anymore because they like clickbait.
Yeah, and so it's funny because I've got a couple of news aggregators, and after I read a couple stories about this, I was on my phone. I read the version that had the logo bit, and I'm like, okay, now the story is in focus. Now it makes sense. So then when I was making the notes for this, I was going back and trying to find that story again, and that's when I realized it was on Gizmodo. I'm like, oh God, I feel so dirty for having read Gizmodo. But that's just so I guess it's back to that thing that we talked about, yesterday. If you read a story and it seems too sensational, it seems too over the top, take a step back and say, okay, what's really going on? Am I getting played here? Yeah, it was interesting.
That's a great catch. I'd missed that whole headline, so I'm glad you got that one because it does just drives home several important points, I think. So good job.
Yeah, and Eric Van Roy in the chat room, he made a comment that it always seems like big businesses are the bad guys. And I agree that makes for a great story. And one of the things you and I have read a bunch of books on business and all of that. There seems to be a group of people, I don't even know how best to describe it, that feel like if you're successful, the only way that you could have done it is by wronging other people. That there is no respectable way to become successful or to become rich. And I think that kind of feeds some of these kind of things. That Microsoft is a huge name. They've made vast amounts of money. 20 years ago, they had legal problems. So yeah, anytime Microsoft does anything, the prejudice is that they did something bad. And this is one case where it wasn't the case.
Yeah. When it's always easiest to blame a faceless company, right? It's easy to blame Microsoft as the devil instead of saying this Eric Lundgren.
Yep.
Who has a face and a name, right? It's really hard to write articles that he's bad because that's a person. You're hurting his feelings. Microsoft, the behemoth, doesn't have a thing.
Yeah. So I just wanted to call the tech media out that we caught him. I'm on to him. We got this one.
Our podcast is running the internet now.
Yep. So for happier news, you've put out some Power App stuff lately. Let's tell the folks about that.
Yeah. So I've been a slacker, right? So I was out there with the product team last week. So, traveling to the West Coast for 2 days, turns out that really kind of messes you up pretty bad. But so I got to go hang out with those guys for a couple of days and talk turkey with the product team. And it was really kind of neat to see that how passionate the team is, right? I mean, they're all excited and jazzed, and you can just tell they all live Power Apps 24/7 right now. They're all that, it's like a startup. I mean, I know it's inside of Microsoft, but they have that startup mentality of, well, what do you do? Well, I work on Power Apps, and I stop, eat some food, and then I work on Power Apps some more, and then I wake up in the morning and I work, right? I mean, you could just feel that energy from them. So that was really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I did get one video out the door though, and that was a Power Apps, just an overview of how to use the user function. Right, so the user function returns the current user's email address, full name, and image if it's all in Office 365. And that's just a handy one that I use for a lot of things, like some fake security trimming to avoid making people type in their own email addresses, that type of stuff. And just, easy little fun video, nothing too complex. But I have been, so what I've been working on though, is I'm coming up with, I get a lot of requests for repeating tables, which we know we have an info path. And there's some solutions on the internet now for kind of how to do repeating tables in Power Apps. But since people keep asking, I'm assuming no one really likes those solutions. So I've got a new solution for that coming out that I'm going to do my darndest to get out the door this week. But then also the other big thing people have been pushing on me for is relational databases. So, they want to build a relational database, but they don't actually want to build a relational database. Right? They want to build a bunch of tables and then have Power Apps do all the relationships, which I can get, right? Because I also would prefer to do it that way instead of trying to, make SQL do that type of stuff. So I've been working on that app, and I can tell you in the process, SQL Server Management Studio has kicked my butt. I don't know.
It's a scary application.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if you're probably embarrassed to be my friend after, who said we were friends, I know, but I'll save you the joke. But it's been an interesting deal, right? Because I'm building this in Azure SQL database as a service. And so the main tool for interacting with that is SQL Server Management Studio, though I think you can do it with VS Code as well. But SQL Server Management Studio it's just not user friendly, right? For a novice or intermediate SQL user, right? I would tell you that I feel like I'm an intermediate SQL guy, right? I've been doing SQL for 15 years. I get data structures, I get normalization, I get indices.
Yeah.
But using SQL Server Management Studio, I feel like I'm using a Mac again, right? It's got the one button. Nothing happens. So I've had a lot of fights with that. So that's been really, really sad. I don't know. Do you want to mock me for that?
I want to mock you for many things. But I will say that SQL Server Management Studio, I feel like the audience for that tool, even though it's a UI tool, is very much the intermediate to advanced, DBA or somebody, because it's not, and I'm with you. I've been like, I was Microsoft certified on SQL 6 or 6.5, like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And I still, and that was when it was Enterprise Manager. I mean, way back then. And I still get tripped up inside of SQL Server Management Studio because of the way things are laid out. And I've been doing, tangentially SQL stuff for a while now. So yeah, it gets clumsy. They make a lot of default assumptions that I don't agree with, and they've got good reasons for doing it. But until you get into their frame of mind, man, you feel like you're all thumbs. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. Right? The single mouse on a Mac is the same. I think that's my best explanation for how I felt working with that.
And you slapping it with all of your hands is exactly how I imagine you.
I'm like a penguin.
Get a frustrated look on your face. And
so the good news is I figured it all out finally. And so, yeah, I'm building an app where I'm going to finally show people this giant relational structure all glued together with Power Apps. That video, though, what I'm finding is that that app is so complicated that I'm going to have to make pieces. So I'm going to do repeating tables as a standalone video. So when I get to that part in that video, I can just be like, and this is covered in a different one if you want to see how this works in real detail.
And you and I talked about this a little bit as you were kind of mapping that out last week. And a lot of the Power Apps example stuff that you do and that Microsoft does have the people doing storing their data in Excel spreadsheets in OneDrive, which is a great way to remove them having to figure out the data piece, and figure out the Power Apps piece. But it's not the solution. It's the way to let you. So yes, I think these videos for showing people how to actually do the right thing in SQL is a good step.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And now what's interesting though, right, is both you and I felt like, all right, the natural evolution from SharePoint or Excel as a data source is SQL as a data source.
Yeah.
And so had some conversations about that. And SQL is definitely a better data source than SharePoint or Excel. But one of the things you have to be careful with
Mm-hmm.
SQL is it can get real expensive.
Yeah.
So we talked before about the SQL Azure Database as a Service, and it starts at $5, right? $5 a month for a database.
Nothing to it.
Yeah, you can't beat that. But one of the big challenges of the Azure databases is the sizing, the performance is mostly based on DTUs, and so DTUs those are data transaction units, and that's really just Microsoft's way of kind of rolling up the performance and the usage of a database into one number that they calculate based on, how many IOPS is it doing, how much RAM does it need, how much CPU does it need, how many ins and outs have you done. They kind of roll all that up into one number called a DTU. And so you buy DTUs, and the more DTUs you have, the more your database costs, but the more transactions it can process. So with Power Apps, right, Power Apps in SQL, especially just built based on how you build and design your app, there can be hundreds and thousands of transactions, maybe not thousands, but hundreds of transactions that it takes to render a single screen. Not unusual. And so when you're working against a DTU number, it turns out 5 DTUs and hundreds of transactions by more than one person, every few seconds, it's not going to work. So what's happening is people are finding out that they're going to have to buy bigger databases. Right, so you're going to take that DTU and go from the 5, what costs $5, and they might need 50 or 100 to roll their solution out in production. And now all of a sudden that database costs, $500 or $1,000 a month. So I don't know, I guess I kind of throw that out there to kind of caution people as you're thinking about these apps and thinking of transitioning to SQL, which I still am helping customers do. And I think it's a good solution. You just need to understand that database probably isn't always going to cost $5.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's good. And you're exactly right. We fall into this all the time. We try something and test, and a certain amount of resources works, and they're like, all right, this is the thing. And then everybody starts banging on it, and the cost just shoots up because now we need multiple servers or, so that's a good thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, and one of the nice things, though, is the Azure portal. If you go into your database, it will show the percentage of DTUs that you're using on a database. So you can look and see, are the issues I'm getting because this thing's using 100% of its DTUs all day? Then you need to move up your DTUs. Or, in the case of the database I went and looked at earlier today, it was, using 0.5% of my DTUs. I'm like, I think I got enough resources allocated there.
Probably good. Probably set. So yeah, I look forward to seeing some of those videos when they come out and talking about how best to do all that.
The good news is once I kind of get it all wired up, you're gonna get to review and make fun of my SQL side of it. So I know you're not ready to tear up my Power App skills. Maybe maybe by that point you'd be like, haha, your Power App sucks too. But I think definitely gonna get you to look at my relational structure that I've built. I've got primary keys and foreign keys but not really foreign keys, right? Because I'm just manually maintaining those relationships. So I don't know, it'd be interesting to see what you think.
Yeah, so off on a tangent, one of the things that my kids' school does is a thing to encourage kids to walk and run during recess. It's called Mileage Club.
Yep.
And there's some software that you can use for that. And so kids have little badges that have QR codes on it. When they do a lap, a teacher or a parent scans the QR code. Seems brilliant. Unfortunately, the particular software that our group uses stinks for a number of reasons. And the only way to get data out is to export these CSV files that were not designed with the end user in mind, and some data is not there. So I've been working with a couple of the other parents to figure out how best we can do all this. And in my head, this all just keeps turning into SQL databases and relational databases and keys coming. But it's all these individual CSV files, and it's all these parents who don't know computer science or don't know any of that. But in my head, I'm like, all right, so I need to bring this in. And it's because that's the best way to do this, but they don't want to do that. The software company, whoever. But yeah, that's exactly how I see these things: is table all that.
Yeah. So my kid does Mileage Club, and they just use a marker to mark on a card.
Well, yeah, that's what we did last year and all the years before it. And so the funny thing about that, now that we're off on the tangent, is for the kids that's instant gratification. So that is two things for the kids. They can immediately see how many laps that they've done and how many they have to do till the next milestone. And the other thing that it does is no matter which parent catches a lap, they've all got it on that card. So I get them one lap, you get them the next lap, I get them the third lap, they can all see it all. So with this particular software that we're using, they don't have the card. So obviously they don't get that. They can't at any time look down. But the other thing is because this stuff takes place outside and the software company doesn't assume that these devices all have an internet connection, it doesn't sync up immediately. So if I scan them and that lad's, that's their 51st lap, and then you scan the next lap, it shows up for you as their 51st lap until we both sync up and both sync back down. And so throughout any period, the kids can't say, okay, how many laps have I done today? Because they're all, in different places. And so that's and the scan and the sync are two different pieces of software, the way this place is doing it. So you can't even do it real time. Like if you, the sync takes 30 to 60 seconds. So you can't even, if you had internet. So that's the kind of some of the things we're trying to overcome. But it's interesting. I ran a race in Des Moines last weekend. And so when I went down to pick up my packet, there were all the vendors out there. And there was another club that does this running stuff for kids, but in Des Moines. So I'm like, hey, how do you guys do this? So they were using the same stuff that we were using and had all the same frustrations. But one of the guys on their team was a computer programmer. So he wrote them their own app. It's like, we fixed all of these things and this guy wrote it and it's ours. And in the chat room, BJ saying it sounds like a scenario for Power Apps. Shane and I have talked about that exact thing, a couple of weeks ago when this first came up. But Power Apps kind of leans completely to the other way, where if it's not connected all the time, then there's problems. So, yeah, I don't know.
Very cool. All right. Well, I realize we're way over time, so I should probably stop. Matt Perry has a question in the chat room. Matt, I will just answer after the show. It's specific, so I'll do that.
Yep. Once again, we ran over. So a couple of things we want to talk about in the community corner. Shane and I's friends, Mark Cashman and Chris McNulty, who are both big wigs at Microsoft, have started podcasting. They've got a podcast called The Intrazone. And so there's links in the show notes and all that. And they've only put one out so far. So I'm you can go check that out. Both good guys, both longtime friends of ours. So go give that a listen, see if it's something that you're interested in. Also, another interesting thing was Chris Johnson, who is a longtime friend of ours, used to work at Microsoft and now has his own thing. He has opened up a Office 365 development Slack channel that you can join for free. And you can go to chrisjohnson.io and sign up for that. And they just talk about developer stuff. I am obviously not a developer, but I lurk in there, and it's interesting seeing, there's enough overlap between what I do and what they do that I can pull nuggets out. If you don't know CJ, he also does a podcast with Andrew Connell, the Microsoft Cloud podcast. Yeah. And so that's also a good one to listen to. We've got a bunch of SharePoint Saturday events coming up here in a couple of weeks. Nashville's having their Cloud Friday and SharePoint Saturday. Montreal, SharePoint Saturday, June 2nd. And Charlotte is going to have one August 11th.
Very cool. Yeah. This community corner is always full, always popular. So very good.
Yeah.
Then we get into promotion, right? So don't forget, we are less than a month away. I probably should book a flight. The SharePoint NA North America Conference is coming to Vegas, May 21st through the 23rd. And what excitement will it be, right? Because if you go, not only will you get to learn lots of fun SharePoint-y stuff, but you will get to see Todd and I, right? We were
go ahead.
I'll say just yesterday we were working on our sessions. We've got an all-day administrators thing after the show, so that's on the Thursday. We've got a migration talk, and we've got just a day in the life of a SharePoint administrator, right? Kind of, it was actually this morning when I was getting ready, believe it or not. It was weird. I was thinking about, things in there, right? And the idea is we just want to make sure that as a SharePoint administrator, you kind of have a handle not only on what you should be thinking about, but what a lot of your peers are thinking about, right? I think it's going to be a fun session just for us to kind of remind people, because most of the voices in the community are SharePoint consultants. And so they're like, bloody, this. But the SharePoint on-prem full-time admins that we know, they do a lot of different stuff, and they're kind of figuring out what pieces to do. So we're going to try and help kind of paint that picture of not only what they're doing, what they're thinking about, but just kind of where their heads should be to, have that long-term viability as a on-prem, SharePoint admin type of guy.
Yeah, that's going to be a fun session, and it's one that haven't done before, and just trying to figure out, where to come at that. Yeah, that's going to be a fun one. Also, on top of that, Shane and I will be doing the podcast. They're going to have some kind of podcast facility there. We're going to be doing the podcast on Wednesday, and after Jeff Teeper's keynote on Monday, we're going to be doing like a quick 30-minute keynote wrap-up that just kind of boils down all the stuff that we do. What he talks about. I don't know exactly how that's going to be broadcast or recorded or whatever, because I haven't heard from the SPC folks exactly what that's going to be. If you're going to be at SPC, come find us. I think that podcasting booth is going to be on the expo floor somewhere. And then, if you subscribe to our channel, subscribe to the RSS feed, we'll end up putting it in there as well. But going to be a lot of stuff. And then Jason Himmelstein and I are doing a session on authentication options for the cloud. So ADFS and Azure AD Connect and all those things. And that's going to be Wednesday afternoon, I think.
Very cool. I look forward to checking out what you boys came up with, asking the really pointed questions I know you don't know the answer in front of people, those type of things.
I do enjoy those situations. Those are always fun. Yeah.
Show everybody I'm smarter.
And then in August, SP TechCon goes back to Boston. That is August 26th through the 29th, and you and I are going to be all over that thing as well.
Yeah, SP TechCon Boston, right? We've got an all-day Power App session, SharePoint migration again, maybe PowerShell. I feel like those are the topics.
Yeah, I forget. There were so many topics, but hopefully we'll see you guys at all those events. All right, so I think that is it. We'll wrap this thing up. Chat room will stick around for a few minutes. If you need to get a hold of us, you can email me, Todd at toddclint.com or at toddclint on Twitter. Shane?
Shane at PowerApps911 or Shane's Cals on the old Twitter. So awesome stuff.
Sounds good, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Toodles.
End it here. All right.
All right, let's see. Let me answer Matt's question before I forget what it was. What was it? I already forgot. All right, so Matt, you said you're running into issues where you're creating duplicate stuff. I bet what you're doing is you're either using the collect function or the patch function instead of like submitting a form. And so I would guess that is what's happening. You'd have to probably kind of give me some details on what, how you're submitting the data to SharePoint so I can tell you why that doesn't work and the right way to do it. But that's one of the nice things about the form control, right? Is if you do the form control and then you do a new form, that's going to create. Or if you do the form control and you do edit form and you pass it an item in and submit that, it'll automatically kind of take care of that. It's when you try and do things manually with patch and collect that a lot of times these duplicate issues happen. Speaking of the mega SQL relationship thing that I've been working on for the last 2 days, I just this morning realized that I was submitting duplicate data in one scenario. So I can appreciate the problem.
Anything else? Okay.
Yeah, I think that's until Matt chimes back in. Oh, yep. Oh, so then Dan wants to point out that he could also just be renaming the title column and generating some conflicts there. So, yep, those are all very valid things. So look forward to Matt chiming in. Oh, what else? I don't know. Another very long show because, I mean, we only had, what, 8 topics today, and what do you do?
Yep. All right, so I need to step away for a minute. Are you going to leave the stream up and answer those questions, or?
Yeah, I'll give Matt another minute. And then and then you said you had you needed me.
Yeah,
right?
I got a couple things. Yep. I'll be right back.
All right. There we go. Matt is typing. Oh, several people are typing. This is exciting stuff. Todd's going to do that thing he did. Okay, so Matt, you used the template connected, did it all for you. And so, yeah, so it shows title like 4 different times. See you, Dan. Yeah, Matt, so typically, I mean, if it's showing title 4 different times, what I would do is if you view the item, does it show the title does it show the same thing 4 different times for each of those different title columns? See you, BJ. Or does it show you different values in those? Does it show one full and one not? This is where the lag kills us, right? I ask you a question, then I have to wait a minute for it to come back. It's very annoying. And better yet, my wife is waiting on me to fix the printer. Apparently our printer has stopped working, so. Printer repair guy. One of the worst titles in all of things. Yep, Stacy, I agree. Let's see, I can close that. There's you.
There's me.
Get rid of that. Yeah, so Matt, what I would tell you is grab a new list, right? So just go manually create a list, give it, 3 columns, and make an app from that, and see if you can kind of get a little better feel for it, and then come back to this one and see if maybe you can try and make it all make sense. Because I mean that's what it is, right? If Power Apps is showing you those, then it's probably there. The other thing to keep in mind is, go back to your SharePoint list and then view all your columns and see if there's a bunch of duplicate stuff there that, makes you go, that doesn't seem like what I was expecting. So, The good news is Power Apps, as far as I know in all these scenarios, works exactly as the way it should and is designed. So if you're having these type of weird issues, I hate to say it, but it's something you're doing, whether it's your list structure is bad or you've messed with something you shouldn't have. But Power Apps doesn't have any bugs in this particular arena that I'm aware of. So I don't know if that probably doesn't make you feel any better, but at least you know you're fighting yourself instead of probably fighting Power Apps. And you can always, you can feel free to post like screenshots and stuff on here if you actually kind of start messing with it. If you have specific questions or you really just can't get your head wrapped around it. Or of course, Power Apps 911, be happy to put us on a billable call together, but you don't want to hear that. So, all right, guys, I think we're going to shut this stream down because it's gotten to that point. It's almost lunchtime for me. So thanks for hanging out with us.
Yeah. And in solidarity with Shane, I take a long lunch, so it's almost lunchtime for me too.
He's a good guy. He takes my lunch and his lunch every single day.
I do.
All right, guys. We'll talk to you soon.